So here it is, February, the month of love and romance, and love is all around. We just had Valentine's Day last weekend, and kind of feel the festivities in the air and the love all around. Love can be that euphoric feeling, especially if you're in a new relationship. You might feel like you can't breathe without the person, but that's not always a good thing. Hi, my name is K.A Bloch, and I'm the award winning poet and author of 4 books that consist of poetry and prose. My channel is called The Practical Poet, and I also have a blog of the same name at thepracticalpoet.com. And each week on my blog and on this channel, I feature a different poem from one of my 4 books, or maybe even some new material. And the poem that I'm talking about today is a poem called Suffocated. And this is kind of that opposite of Valentine's Day. This is where a person is trying to get away from a relationship, somebody that he or she feels like is suffocating them. And the next day after Valentine's Day is Singles Awareness Day. And that is a day that is kind of counterpart to Valentine's Day. And that is for all of the people that are single, either by choice or by circumstance. And in this relationship here, in this poem that I'm about to read to you, this person would probably much rather celebrate Singles Awareness Day than they would Valentine's Day. The poem came to me probably from watching a movie, one of those psychological thrillers. Have you ever watched those where you see somebody in a new relationship and they're just starting out, they just recently met somebody and they're on that cloud nine, they're in that euphoria, they can't live without each other, they can't breathe without each other. And 2 minutes apart is 2 minutes too long when you're in that state. But then we as the audience start to see some red flags that the main character can't see. And we start to think, oh boy, this doesn't look good. And things start to happen, and as the movie rolls on, and more and more strange things are happening, and maybe the main character is getting a little bit of a vibe that things are not right, but they still keep pursuing on with the relationship. And I can see how that can happen. We want so bad to be in a relationship or to have somebody in our lives and walk down the aisle and plan to make that life together, that we tend to ignore those red flags. And maybe it's on the movie screen, or maybe we're witnessing somebody in our own life that's in a new relationship, and we're seeing things that they're not seeing, and we're trying to maybe tell them, like, hey, just use a little caution here, but they don't want to listen to us. And just like the people in the movie theater and on the movie screen, they don't want to listen to the people in their lives that are saying, what about this, or have you seen this, or kind of giving them clues that things may not be right. They just are, they have their blinders on, and they want to move forward with that relationship. And we may even yell at the TV screen, or we may even be texting our friend and saying, what you need to think about this, this is not right. And the main character, or the person that we're trying to warn in our own lives, may get a little bit defensive. They may step back away from us. They might pull more toward this person in the relationship in a kind of a protective way with them. And they may say, you don't know what's going on, this is the person that I love. And even though they may have warning bells going off in their own head, they're still going to kind of ignore that, and they're still going to move forward with the relationship, even at the risk of casting us or casting loved ones out of their lives. This person that they're with is the be all end all, and they're not seeing the red flags. And until maybe there's a turning point, and there usually is in the movies, and in the relationship maybe that we're witnessing from somebody in our own world, there's some kind of a turning point. Something typically happens, and this person starts to realize, like, hey, I need to get out of this, this is not right, things are not right, I need to escape. And they kind of employ that fight or flight instinct that we all have. And maybe it's not even all that dramatic. Maybe it's just, hey, I need to end this relationship, I need to step away, things are just not feeling right with me. In psychology, there is a term called cognitive dissonance, and that has to do with kind of something's not right, but you're trying to justify it. And I think we probably all have done that, and we witness people do that until eventually you get to the point where you can't deny it anymore. And that's kind of what happened with the character in this poem that I'm about to read for you. So in this poem here, we see that young love happening, and I typically don't assign a gender to my characters. I just kind of leave that up to interpretation. But for some reason in this poem, I do feel like it's more of a female voice, and I feel like it's more of a male that's doing a little bit of the suffocating. And it doesn't have to be that way, and it's not, that's not exclusive to men or women. You know, there's plenty of women that can bring the crazy to a relationship as well as a man can. So I just happened to write this, you know, with a little bit more of a female voice. So you can decide for yourself if you think it's more of a male or female voice. But you know, we start to see them, you know, they want to fall in love, they want, you know, they're euphoric about this new relationship, they want to move forward, and then things start to change for them, and we're not exactly sure what changes in the poem, but we know that a shift has happened, something has happened, and it comes around the time when the other person, you know, says those three little words, those, you know, that those I love you words. And at that moment they kind of claim this person as like a prize, like they almost branded them with the I love you. It's almost like they put their stamp on them saying, I told you I loved you, you're mine now. And the other person realizes that, and they start to kind of take a step back and say, whoa, like this is a little bit too much for me. And they have to start to decide for themselves if, you know, they can stay in that relationship, or if they need to move on. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into the video poetry reading of the poem Suffocated. Before I do that, I've been talking all day and my throat is actually really scratchy, and there's some illnesses going around. I'm hoping I'm not catching it, but I have a nice cup of tea here to soothe my throat. So I'm going to go ahead, take a nice sip of tea, put my glasses on. We have a really overcast, cold day. We had some nice weather last week, even in like the mid 60s, and today just feels bitter and cold out there. So our old man winter has not left us yet. He's still kind of hanging around and letting us know he's still here. So I'm going to go ahead and get into this video poetry reading. Again, this is a poem called Suffocated from my latest book called Sow Seeds of Wisdom. And you'll kind of go on this little journey with this person as they start to realize that you know, maybe things aren't right in this relationship. Once upon a time, as many young girls do, I dreamed about the day when life would bring me you. And then it finally happened, and my life felt so complete. I had such grand hopes of the dreams you'd help me meet. So many plans and wishes that I hoped we'd both achieve. The world offered you to me, and I was ready to receive. Things started out so carefree as we enjoyed our new romance. You bowed and offered me your arm, and I was so eager to dance. We started on a journey that we both did adore, but then you said three little words, and I felt them to my core. I imagined these three little words would give me such a lift, but it seemed it was at that moment I felt the ground beneath us shift. I felt my breath suck in, and the world seemed to change. It did not make any sense to me as to why I felt so strange. I could not seem to fathom all the feelings that I felt. It was like you pulled me close to you and tightened up your belt. I could not breathe. My breath was gone. My lungs felt suffocated. I was drowning in confusion when I should have been elated. But when you said you loved me, you claimed me like a prize. It was precisely at that moment I felt anxiety rise. Before you said you loved me, my life was on my own. I didn't spend my afternoons running from the phone. Before you said you loved me, I hardly ever cried. Now I always have a box of tissues by my side. Before you said you loved me, I had freedom, I had choices. Then you came for me with all your threats and crazy voices. Before you said you loved me, I really was not aware of how quickly the dream I had could change to a nightmare. When you said you loved me, I felt so suffocated. I wanted love so badly that my self respect I traded. So it is for these reasons that I must set myself free. My fight or flight kicked in, and so I chose to flee. I really don't believe that love should feel like such a chore. So, yes, I know you love me, but I love my own self more. So that was the video poetry reading of the poem Suffocated. So you can kind of see in the poem how things shift. And we're not exactly, you know, sure when that happens, but or how it happens. I guess it happens around the time that the other person said, "I love you." And like I said, it's kind of like they branded them. And as the poem says, it was like, you know, they pulled this person close to them and tightened up the belt, kind of saying, "You are mine," and you know, we're going to be together, and and this person just wanted to get away. The tightening of the belt was too much for them, and they kind of stepped back and said, I can't breathe, you're suffocating me. And then you can kind of see the shift here. It almost seems like the person maybe started to pursue them a little bit more. And then, the person says, I never used to spend my afternoons running from the phone. And how about that? If you're trying to avoid somebody, or you don't want them to contact you, and all of a sudden you pick up your phone and you see their number, and it just feels like that anxiety, like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get away from this person? They're everywhere I look. And the person, how sad that they had such high hopes for this relationship, and then all of a sudden they're crying all the time, have this box of tissues by their side. And then it even turns a little bit darker, where the person says, I had choices, and then you came for me with your crazy voices. So this is maybe even getting into a little bit of a step. Definitely at that point, it's time to get away from that relationship. So definitely not a healthy relationship by any means to be in. Hopefully you have not been in this kind of a relationship, or know somebody that has. Hopefully nobody that I guess I should say, has been in this kind of a relationship, because it really is very, very unhealthy. We do see this kind of relationship portrayed in a lot of movies, because it does make for a great movie, doesn't it? And as we're watching it, we really get involved, and we're really rooting for that main character to make this realization that the person in this poem did, to say, my fight or flight kicked in, and I'm choosing to flee. I'm choosing to get away from this. Um, and saying that, yeah, I know that you love me, I acknowledge that, but I love my own self, and I love my own privacy, and freedom more than being in this crazy relationship. And so, when you make that realization, that's a great growth experience, or that's a great growth moment, when you stand on your own 2 feet and you say, I'm not going to take this anymore, I'm out of here. Yeah, I know you love me, and maybe even I love you too, but that's not going to be enough, and I'm going to need to exit this relationship, and I'm going to choose my own self. And you know what? I hope that person that chooses themselves really relishes in that Singles Awareness Day. Maybe goes out and buys him or herself some flowers, maybe takes themselves to dinner, and just enjoys that freedom of being single, celebrating their independence, and really patting themselves on the back, or feeling that pride for being strong enough to break away from this person who they're realizing is not a very good fit for them. So I hope you enjoyed this video poetry reading of Suffocated. The poem can be read in its entirety on my blog in written form at thepracticalpoet.com. And then I will link that below, so you can go right to it. And I would love if you would check out my blog for other full-length poems, and the backstory as to how they were written. And if you want to be notified next time I do a video poetry reading, please hit the like and subscribe button. And I hope that Valentine's Day in February, and all of the days here, are good ones for you, and that you're happy and finding your love and your romance, and chocolates and flowers and all of the good things, and that love is that euphoric feeling for you, and not the bad one like we just experienced in this book. So wherever you are, I hope that you're staying warm. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend, and we'll chat soon. Thanks. Bye.